Hello and welcome to another episode of the Complete Agent Podcast, where each week we get together to talk all things estate agency. My name is David Warburton. Today I'm joined only by James Kendall because Ian Story is skiing this week. Where is he skiing? Is he in Norway?
Norway this week.
So he's been sending some awful pictures into our group.
The human wasp.
And you're actually away as well, aren't you, JK? Where are you?
I am, yeah. I'm dedicated. I'm in Norfolk this week.
Norfolk?
Yeah,
Norfolk
in Chance.
Hey!
Lads. No, we're in a place called... Yeah, we're in a place called Walcott, like Theo. It's north, I think, sort of North Norfolk. And we were going to spend this half term hopefully in the Middle East, but unfortunately, as you know, Kendall violins in the background. My dog's not been very well, so we decided to take him away and do a last sort of beach holiday with him. He's loved it, to be fair, but the reality is he's probably not going to be with us in the next week or so. So
bless him.
Yeah, a little bit sad, but he's enjoyed it. It's been good. Ian will be pleased to know we're conversion, which is quite nice.
You turned into a robot then, JK. Say that again.
I said we're staying in a ban conversion in Norfolk. I said that Ian will be very pleased to hear. It's been good. We've been busy in the office. We've got some good stuff coming on. What else have we got? Crikey. Very good completions. Obviously, the stamp duty holiday is about to kick in very soon. So there's a lot of people wanting to complete next month, which is good. So inevitably, the pipeline should hopefully convert at a very good rate in the next sort of 2 to 6 weeks or so. What are we now? The 20th. So yeah, the next 6 weeks, the pipeline should hopefully all start to filter in, which would be good. What about you?
Well, as you know, I've been on my deathbed for the last sort of week, 10 days. Heroically so, obviously. Some would say it is a long hangover following a stag weekend in Dublin a couple of weeks ago. Others will applaud me for my heroics for getting back to it right now. But no, I've been wiped out for the last week or two, and it's so frustrating because you're just not doing anything. Obviously, you're not seeing anyone. But the team have been doing great things in the background, so things have been moving along nicely. I think for me, the start to the year has been quite strong. Unit volume isn't as high as I would want necessarily, but our pound notes are brilliant, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's what matters, isn't it? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's
the frustrating thing though is we're doing really well pound note wise, which is obviously the most important part. Of course it is. But when your units could be better, the pound notes will obviously be better as well. So I've been out to a lot of valuations, a few slow burners.
So why do you think that is, out of interest? Why do you think that is?
There's still quite a few people taking time to make decisions. I went to a lot of valuations in January. It's been a bit quieter in February. Obviously we've got the half term now. But I've got quite a few people waiting to make decisions. I've got quite a few in photography as well, to be fair as well. There's a lot of stuff ready to come on the market. And it feels, I don't know whether you're the same, but it feels like it's taking a while to get deals over the line. But again, I was talking to the team yesterday. It was my first sort of day back in the office and just reviewing offers and things like that. And the offers are really strong. So I actually think by the end of February, we'll have had almost like not a record month, but getting close to.
Nice.
And that's one of the big changes when you move over to, I think, to the sort of mid to high end range, because your slow months actually can be recovered just by one or two really great sales. And that's what we found. I think in years gone by, if the units had been light, then you struggle pound notes, but because our average fee is like £14,000 now. It doesn't matter as much. Obviously, of course, you always want more, and you want your units to be consistent with your pound notes. But you can have that imbalance sometimes, and it doesn't hurt you as much. But yeah, so I think the end of February is going to be like when we get to the end and we'll look back at it, we'll go, what a great month. But I suppose having that time off as well, it's just felt a little bit slower. But
I think, yeah.
all good.
I was going to say, like, your February is going to be like my January was. Like, our February hasn't been great. It's been very average. Very average. We've got a few things bubbling. We've got a few chains where we've got like a 475 house that wants a 650 house of us, and a 650 house wants a 1.25 house of us. And then there's a potential for another house to come in at the bottom of the chain that we're going to take on a sort of 325 sort of modern house. So really nice chain all together. But I mean, this month, February's been more of a listing month, I've got to be honest, than a selling month. We've had probably, well, looking at the system now, I mean, we've only got 6 actual sales for February that we've put in the pipeline, which isn't a great shout. But you know, it is what it is. You know, we depleted a lot of our market pipeline in January, so we need more stock. We've gone out, we've got more stock, and we've got loads and loads coming on. Some really good stuff, some really good barns as well. Ian, I'll be pleased to know. How's your week been, Ian? Well, lads, listed a few barns at 2%. Gone skiing. Have to throw it in. That's the rule. Whenever anyone misses the podcast, somebody else has to do an impression of the person that was on there. So for the listeners, that wasn't actually Ian. That was me doing an impression of him, just in case you didn't get that.
No way. I thought it just zipped on quickly then.
It was that good. I'm sure there will come a point when AI improves at a rate where we can actually get him in and just feed him random things to say, like barn conversion 2%, and it'll fill in the gaps.
Semi. That sort of thing.
So yeah.
No. Well, if Ian was here, he would say, "Yeah, great week, lads," and then he'd just go on about his barn conversions that he's been to all week. So, yeah, I'm sure it's been good for him as well. So, to be honest, I think everybody's probably feeling the same way in some respects. Generally speaking, when you get a half term, it quietens down as well. We know that. But with the stamp duty deadline coming, we've obviously just recently had an interest rate drop. The market feels busier. One thing I would say, and we did touch on it the other week, is that I'm finding quite a lot of success with reductions. There's, we've had, again, I think you get it more so, I feel, at the mid to higher end because the valuations are more subjective. But, you know, a lot of vendors do want to try that a little bit higher than perhaps what market value might suggest, pound per square foot, etc. And I think there's always an element where you've got to give it a go. And there's we had a few sticky stock, and having had some really positive conversations post Christmas, loads of the stock has gone under offer that we've reduced. So
that's good.
So I think those are important conversations to be having. Honest
We've had a
conversations.
few of those ourselves actually, and I don't think we can understate how important that is. Where you know some stuff we've chopped 100k off, which obviously is massive. But if you're at sort of 900 grand and you're coming down from 9 to 8, but the reality is no one's looking at it. You know, we've tried to be optimistic. We've looked at the data. The data didn't match the expectation, so we now need to be going 8 to go to 8. We've done it recently with another house where we got 820-ish. But we'd always said that was the level it was going to be. That's where the data was pointing, more towards early 8s than it was 9s. And getting that reduction has then resulted in influx of interest, multiple offers. It's now under offer. They can move on, and it's their time in the market as well. So, you know, they've obviously their expectations have been battered by 60k, but equally they're upsizing to a 1.5. A house that they want to buy at 1.5 sat on the market. Had obviously a chat with the agent there. They're probably prepared to take nearer 1.25 than they are 1.5. Which just brings me on very quickly to a house I went to. I put it in the group with you lads. I went to back end of last year. No, earlier than that, sorry, probably mid last year now. And lovely house, lovely big house, modern house, like an amazing kitchen, etc. And they were, we won't sell this for less than 1.5. And I said, I'm really sorry, but, you know, the data's more 1.25. You know, maybe 1.3 if you're lucky, but more 1.25. And he almost booted me out. And I said, well, look, this is not my valuation. It's the data. And the bottom line is that the data doesn't support 1.5. Anyway, went on the market with another agent. They said, oh, well, you know, we found somebody at half the fee. They'll do it for 1% and they'll put it on at 1.5. And they've got a London office. Brilliant. Okay. went on the market for 20 weeks. The London office, unfortunately, did not materialise any buyers. They're not responded to my texts or calls either, which is funny. But anyway, each to their own. Anyway, they've just gone on with another agent, which is like a national self-employed agent. And again, same price. This agent has completely screwed up the description. The description says, watch the video tour. You click watch the video tour, and it's like, sorry, this isn't available right now. And it's just like, they're so blinkered by what they want price wise and like what an agent charges. And because I was more 1.25 and 2%, and they wanted 1.5 and 1%, I wasn't prepared to move. You know, we talked about, and we'll get into it in a second, about commerciality. It's just not worth it. You know, even if they're paying £500, £1,000 up front for marketing, to commit to updating that person every week, just to tell them nothing's happened, and they're not prepared to budge. You know, that element of commerciality, it's not worth it. You know, I'd rather work with people that value what you say, listen to what you say, and are clearly motivated to move. But yeah, that's what I would say that.
No, 100%. You're going to get it. I was on the phone a couple of days ago to a client for almost an hour discussing sort of having a thorough seller review, very thorough seller review, and it's actually on the mid-range brand. And they've been on for a while, and it is their price. And I've probably, I think, potentially misread their motivation because there's, you know, they've not wanted to change the price at all up until actually getting the reduction just a couple of days ago. But even the reduction that we've put in place is probably not going to be enough to get it over the line, I don't think, just because there's so much competition in the area in which they are at the moment, and they've got agents naturally telling them that they've got huge databases of buyers. And I was explaining to them that it is a myth that these people have these buyers. Ask them to bring the buyers around, the usual thing, and I promise you they will disappear. And it was they were sort of talking about how they felt, you know, their local presence that they were talking about, and this buyer database that they've got. And when I actually looked at their stats, they'd sold like 35 or 40% of their stock list.
Wow.
I know, and I was pointing this out to them, and it was an eye opener to them, to be fair, when they started to see that and realise that. And then the other thing with them was that part of them being blinkered, they thought that they were only in competition with about 2 or 3 houses. Like they said, we feel there's only about 3 houses that we're in competition with. There's that one just around the corner on such a street, that one there, and that one there. And this house is basically on at 425,000. And I did it's probably worth 375, 400 on a very good day. And I did a search in the area in which they live, and I did 375 to 425, and 65 houses came up. 65.
Wow, that's not surprising, though.
No, it's not. But their perception is, well, we're only in competition with 2 or 3 houses, because they are looking at these houses as competition. And I was trying to explain to them that their overall market won't be looking at just those 3 houses. They'll have a much wider criteria, the much wider radius that they're looking at. And you know, there's other houses that are of a similar size. The market has also been dropping in your area. The longer you wait, blah blah blah. And it did get through in the end, and we've secured a decent reduction. But I'm still not convinced it's enough to get them moving. But you're always going to get that. And I think you're quite right, JK, with what you were saying. My point is, you do have to take that commercial decision. Even though that house there is a £1.5 million house, I'm sure you'll make it look incredible and it'll look really nice on your books. Just being sat there with somebody who's not motivated to budge and move, then it's just going to drain and sap not just your energy, but the energy of your team when they're ringing up looking for updates. Why have we not had any viewings, etc.?
Yeah.
So I think you do have to make those decisions, and I think it's probably the right one. You did send that in the group, and I think sometimes you have just got to concede sometimes that they're not the right client for you.
We all make mistakes, though. And we've had a few recently we let go, and I mentioned one to you as well, where I had it on last year, and we took it on, and it was I wanted to list it off as over 1.25 to try and get 1.4, maybe 1.45, which seems audacious, but I'm quite good at doing that. and they liked the idea of 1.45, but they didn't like the idea of using my strategy. So what they said was, okay, well, let's put it on at 1.45. And I was like, that's not really what we discussed. We talked about, but people aren't going to pay over this and blah, 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 blah. Then they started trying to renegotiate the fee after they'd signed terms. And I was like, oh, God, this is going to be one of them. Anyway, we managed to stay where we were. And I said, look, at the end of the day, it's 2% of nothing if we don't sell it. At the end of the day, and they were like, yeah, fair enough. Anyway, cut a long story short, they were adamant they wanted to go on at 1.45. We sat on at 1.45. Nothing happened. And then, they were blaming the market, blaming the marketing and this, that, and the other. And I was like, look, the market is not going to get any better. Or, we need to be in London. I was like, you are in London. You're everywhere. It's the price. It's not the marketing. It's the market. It doesn't agree with the price. Anyway, long story short, they took it off in a huff. And now they're going to relaunch this year with another agent. And they've asked the other agent to use my photos, basically, and my floor plan and stuff. And I'm like, right, okay. The thing is, this other agent uses my old photographer as well.
Oh, really?
So because I get on really well with my old photographer, and I still use him every now and then to fill in bits. And I just said because he said to me, I'm going to have to go out and reshoot because it doesn't bother me. He goes, I'll go out and reshoot. And I said, well, end of the day, mate, I was like, just do what you need to do. I was like, I'm not bothered. If at the end of the day, he's still going to be taking the photos, it's going to look exactly the same. I was like, it does him a solid. The other agent that is going on with, actually a really good agent. Like, I like them a lot. Got a really good relationship with them. So I've just said, you know what? Just take him. Just take him. Like, it's not business I want. And there's been times before with that other agent where, they've been on the other foot. I mean, admittedly, I haven't taken their photos, but I've got a really good working relationship with that agent. I think that's something that's underutilized in our industry. Obviously, we're with TCA, we're a great collaborative community. A lot of agents that want to do, high performing and do the right thing. But I also feel like in a lot of people's towns, collaboration amongst the agents is almost non-existent. And sometimes having a really good relationship with your competitors can be fruitful, because you're all on the same thing. There's enough business to go around. And these guys in particular, I used to work there actually, which helps. Probably, oh God, how long ago is that now? 17 years ago, I worked there.
Wow.
And the same guys are still there. They were really nice people to work for. So it makes a difference. But anyway, the bottom line is that house, sometimes you just got to be prepared to say goodbye, because it's not, it's going to come back on at the same price again. The merry-go-round's going to go, well, it's going to be their problem. Or, why aren't we in London? Where are these mythical London buyers that don't exist? They're on Rightmove and social media like everyone else. They're not walking into Notting Hill saying, hello, I've got 5 million to spend. And then the person in there goes, have you heard of Bedford, sir? It's not going to happen. It's just absolute PS. Anyway, I'm conscious that we're 18 minutes in now, and that we were going to recap our mini-series of Partner Agency. So
Indeed. Well, it's been a good few weeks. I missed last week, unfortunately. Did I tell you I was really ill last week?
You didn't mention it, mate. No, you hit it well.
Yeah, I was really struggling, actually. So thanks for the outpouring of love. We received a lot of text messages and support. Really appreciate that.
Pray for Dave. One like, one prayer.
I received none. In fact, at one point, Kate in the office messaged me saying, my God, this is one long hung hangover, basically. So thanks for the support, guys.
One long hung hangover.
Hung hangover. One long hangover. Anyway, yeah, so it's been a really good series, actually. There's been some brilliant guests on. Really enjoyed listening to Ian last week, Ian Macbeth. Obviously, I wasn't on that, and you and Ian Story.
Arguably best ever episode without you.
Well, no, there were a lot of complaints actually, suggesting that we should re-record it, but it
Too
was
much
a good
Southern.
listen. It was, yeah. Well, it was a good listen. It was a very good listen, and I thought he added a lot of value. So, yeah, we just thought we'd recap on a few points that were raised from each of the episodes and give our overall thoughts. And we've got a bit of time to do that. So let's run through it. So we started with Perry, didn't we? What did you take from the Perry episode, JK?
A couple of different things. One of the first things, obviously, a lot of time for Perry. One one of the OGs of partner agency in the UK, in my opinion. Again, always trying to kind of move forward and push boundaries. And I think one of the things that I learned was from that episode in particular is that if somebody's right, you should take them on, whether they're self-employed or not.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, there's, and Perry said it on that episode, don't just plug in a partner agent to an area that you crap in. If you come across somebody that is really good and that could add serious value to your business, then take them on, self-employed or not. Take on the right people. One thing he also said, I remember from that episode, was that, he's running at far less partner agents than he ever was. And as a result, he's, with the right team and the right people, he's more profitable than he's ever been. Which I thought was really, really good. And then, the last thing was commerciality. Making sure that, the decisions that you make have got commerciality about them. So, sometimes if you're taking on a £3.5 million house, if you have to do a bit of a deal, and it's then ends up being a 45 grand fee rather than a 50 grand fee, or, there's different elements of commerciality where it fits in. I just think there was a few things he brought up on that episode that kind of stuck out to me and kind of made me evaluate in terms of certainly recruitment process as well.
Yeah, and he's obviously very experienced. What I like about Perry, he's done a lot of it, hasn't he? He's tried a lot of stuff. And as you've said, he's clearly had volume. He's tried different splits or whatever. He's come back to a more consolidated way of doing it, I think. One thing that stuck out, there's two things that stuck out for me. He said, and I've said it a couple of times since, but don't become an estate agent if you want a lifestyle business. That really stood out for me. So I just thought, a lot of people do go into this industry on a self-employed route, basically thinking that they can spend time on the golf course 3 days a week and sell houses for a couple of them, which is just nonsense. But he also said the one thing that he really made clear when we were talking about it, he said, it's a partner agency, so it's a partnership. You're in it together. And he believes in a full 50-50 split on everything, but with that obviously they need to get that full support and be given full support. And that's something actually that came across from everybody that we spoke to, which we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, I thought he made some really good points there. And I think he's obviously got an extremely good setup, and the guys that he's got working with him are clearly invested in what he does, and he really shouts them out quite a lot as well on his social media pages, which I like. So it was a good episode that, and I think he had a lot of value to add. Who do we have after that? We had Rich Bray.
So Rich Bray? Not a lot, mate, really, to be honest. I've seen him on social. No, obviously, Rich has been with me for a long time, and it's always interesting. We obviously, when I'm at work, there's not really a day where we don't speak. So I've got quite a good feel on how he's feeling, and what he's doing, and where his steer is. And it's obviously interesting listening to him on a podcast where other people can ask questions. And I think what people would have got out of it, obviously, I know I've got a slightly different perspective because we speak every day, and we've had a great relationship for the past 6 or 7 years. But I think what people could have taken from that was, starting from cold in a new area, because, whilst the brand did have some good elements to it and things that he could lean on, he was still out there in an area where, if you stop people down the street, they didn't know who we were as a business. So, whereas now you drive through the village he lives in, and you can't drive in or out without seeing a JK board, which is a really nice accolade for him. Then learning behind the desk, I think, again, we'll obviously get onto the learnings of all of the pods altogether. But one of the things I've certainly learned, and, he kind of brought it home on the pod as well, was, having experience and being an experienced agent. He did probably, he laughs about it and calls himself the unpaid temp. But, sat behind the desk for 6 months, listening to calls that go on, seeing what happens on shoots and seeing what goes wrong, what goes right, how to deal with different things, and just getting that experience. I mean, you said it before, Dave, as well, that anyone that wants to do this should probably go and work for a corporate for a year or two behind the desk
Yeah.
and get a flavour of corporate estate agency, because it gives you a great grounding, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I really liked about Rich's episode, because he came in with no experience really. He's got great experience in what he does in banking. He's own pubs as well, hasn't he? So he's always been front facing. He said, I think he mentioned he'd done quite a lot of presentations in the past. So I think he had a lot of the attributes to bring to the game anyway. But there's no question that when you go in selling someone's biggest tax-free asset and you don't understand the sales progression process, or even how viewings are conducted and how things are booked in and how offers are made, and the sort of positives and the negatives that can come from it, then if you don't know all that, then you'll really struggle in the living room, and you'll struggle. I think you'll struggle to get going, to be quite honest with you. So I've always thought that. I've always said 6 to 12 months behind the desk, but to be honest, 6 is probably not enough. And what I really took my hat off to Rich for is that he just came in and sat with you in the office for that period of time, and really got involved in it. And he said something else that I wrote down at the time, actually, that I've just picked up on. And he said one thing that he loves about working at JK is that you're all committed to the mission. And I think that's really important. So he feels like he's a self-employed partner agent, but he feels part of a team and part of a network. And he said he also said whenever he can, even though he has to be out there being proactive, knocking on doors and doing his videos and market updates, whatever it might be, getting letters out, he always feels like he can come into the office and be part of that team. And that's been a consistent theme across the pod series when we've spoken to people, about the sort of the good and the bad. The bad is usually, most people have said, the loneliness, haven't they? That you are there on your own. If you quit your job, you are there in your home office or whatever, at your kitchen table, and that's literally it. You've got your mobile phone and nothing much more. So you really need that support, I think, regardless of which network you decide to join, and know that you have got that support to grow your own brand. And that, what I mean by that is your personal brand as well, because some people will have their own business brand with the likes of EXP. Some will join an actual brand and just be a partner agent within that. But I think you regardless, you still need that support. And Rich also talked quite passionately about the financial elements of it as well. He was in a fortunate position where he had some money to see him through, and he felt that you need to be probably 9 months. You need 9 months behind your finances.
Easy.
And that's if you're successful from day one. Don't forget, if you hit the ground running. If you don't, then you're obviously fighting a losing battle. Every month that goes by that you don't list a house is another month of income lost. So you really need to have a plan in place, and you have to have.
You've got to take yourself out of your comfort zone as well. That's the other thing, is that I think a lot of people sit behind a desk and they're great conversion people. So they're great at converting the leads. And the missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people when it comes to partner agency is lead generation. And I think that, obviously we can go over that in the other episodes that we're going to obviously go over in a minute. But one of the things that we again just talk about with Rich for lead generation is that, when he first started out, I wasn't just serving him up, ready-made houses ready to go. There was a few I gave him, admittedly, to kind of cut his teeth on. His first sale was horrendous. But before we were really got serious about the mid to high end, going back 6 years ago now, he sold an awful, with a contract for a retirement company, and we basically got all the people that were buying in this 200-odd apartment block. We got all of the houses to sell, to go in them, and one of them was this bungalow. It was awful. I would nowhere put it on the market now. But he cut his teeth. Got into the process. Showed people around. Sold the most unlikely buyer a bungalow. But it was a great learning experience, and he still reverts back to it now. And I just think it's getting that experience under your belt is crucial. But then also realizing that a brokerage. I mean, different brokerage has different things. Some will serve you leads, some won't. But the majority, if you want to be successful, you've got 9 months behind you. then you need to be out knocking doors. You need to be going out and getting in front of people, getting that low-hanging fruit, getting yourself out there. Talking about commerciality, if you have to do a fee deal on your first one to get yourself, out there and, start the process off, that's what you have to do. Everyone thinks that 2% happens overnight. Yes, you can go out there and charge 2%. But, you're going to give yourself a much more of an uphill challenge when you're unproven and no one's ever heard of you. So shall we move on to the next one? So Alex Pelosi Buchanan. Yes.
Another great guess. One thing I took from Alex, I think, from memory, was he started out with quite a wide. He didn't want to. I'm sure he looked at different options, but he said he didn't want any restrictions on where he could cover. Because I think from some areas, I think, or with some partner agents that he spoke to, there are certain restrictions. You might only be able to cover a certain postcode so that you're not clashing and you non-compete with somebody else who's perhaps in the same network. Whereas with Alex, he wanted the absolute flexibility to go where he wanted to go, because he had friends, family members, contacts, whatever, in certain parts of Wales where he is, that he didn't want to just shut off because he was getting asked to do work there, and he wouldn't want to be able to say, I can't do that because I'm not allowed to, essentially. His view is, I'm self-employed, I'm a partner agent, it's my business, I want to go and do what I want to do. And he certainly does that well. And I think, again, that's something else I've picked up, when people start, and this is not just from sort of speaking to the guys that we've had on the pod, but just in general, I think sometimes, and I was guilty of it in the very early days when we first started Relocate, but you can cast your net so wide that you become known to no one, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You might take instructions that are dotted around everywhere, whereas actually you can be a very, very successful if you start small, concentrate on small, maybe a local estate or a local area that you know very, very well, and grow out from there. And I think a lot of the best self-employed agents do choose to do that and have a lot of success doing it. I know, again, jumping forward a little bit, but Ian Macbeth was talking about his partner agents and being quite specialists within their areas that they serve. And I think that's why they are as successful as they are, because they do know everything and they can sort of build a core following in a local area. So I think that's quite an important part of partner agency as well. Understanding what market you're going to go for and niche, basically, rather than trying to be all.
I was going to say what's the saying? Your riches are in your niches. Yes. Is that the saying? And niching down, it sounds about right. Let's go with it. And I think one of the things I learned from that episode is that I think great agents will succeed no matter what. I think for Alex in particular, obviously having known him in his employed life and been in touch with him before, I don't think it really matters what brokerage he was part of. I think he would succeed no matter which brokerage he was attached to, in my opinion, just because I think, with what he does and his attitude, and I just think he's a great all-round agent. But I also think that model at the moment suits him quite well because he's got real good uncapped earning potential, and what he really wants, basically, from what I gleaned of it, was access to a CRM and access to Rightmove. And I think EXP gives him that. I think having the maximum commission split available for him, I think, is beneficial for someone like him. And whereas if you've got somebody that maybe isn't as strong at lead generation, isn't as well known, doesn't have a great personal network, they may need to lean on a network and their own partner agent network to generate them leads, and maybe as a result sacrifice part of the commission split. But also going back to being a partnership, he's having to basically upfront the costs for the marketing, upfront the costs for this. You get your CRM and you get your basic costs covered for not a lot of money, which I think is great. But one thing I did thought was quite negative on that, and this is not doing down EXP because there are others like this as well, is the lack of brand guidelines. I think that could be dangerous. He's really lucky where he is, that he's got two really good agents side by side with him. But I think I brought it back in the TCA group the other week. There is a really good agent in my area that works for
Yeah.
one of the sort of premium licensees, shall we say. And then just next door is another licensee, but they'll take iPhone photos and steal other people's floor plans and put come in soon picture. And it's just honestly awful. And, we've actually had conversations where, like, he's a really good guy and we get on really well. But I've actually destroyed him in the living room up against him, because I've gone, well, look, this is also that agent as well. Whilst this agent has said they'll do this, but they also take iPhone photos and they also do this, and they're low end, because they had a 2-bedroom flat on at 125 as well. I'm like, who are that? No brand guidelines. There's got to be brand. I mean, for that brand is so established, there's got to be brand guidelines for that. Someone watching that going, no, come on, mate, we can't have that on there, because it's just bringing everything else down, which is why I think we brought it up in that episode and then why it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, part of our, it seems such a long time ago now, but when we first started doing our podcasts and stuff, and we did the mini-series about how do you look and stuff like that, I think Alex perfectly encapsulates that, because I think what he did was took his time as well. He knew what he wanted to do in terms of how to present, and I don't think he wanted to compromise on that. I think, like you say, there's always a risk that somebody else within the network might let the side down with the quality of their marketing, but he wasn't going to be one of them. And he, we've all seen Alex's presentation. It's amazing. It's fantastic. His videos are brilliant, and puts himself out there. All his photographs are great, etc. So I think he really bought into that himself, and he took his time. And another thing I remember him saying was, I think he watched first. I think he was watching certain people within the network. Obviously, he looked at a few different partner agency models, but he was looking at certain people and how they performed. And then I think he attached himself to a couple that he liked, and got a flavour of it. So he didn't just jump in, is what I'm saying. I know did he mention Ben? I think it was Ben Moore. He spent a bit of time with and stuff like that and watch. But to me, it feels like he's an extremely talented estate agent, but he didn't just jump in feet first. He took his time and made sure that when he did make the decision, it was the right one. And I think he stayed true to himself. He talked about those first few months as well from memory, about it was quite difficult at first. You haven't got that money behind you. And you do have those conversations at night saying, oh, is it worth it? When you've not got as many listings coming on, and it takes time to get sales through, and you're on your phone at a stupid o'clock, but then you get that big commission and it's also worth it. So I do think there's an element of that as well, because I've spoken to so many partner agents now over the last sort of 12 months where it's just not worked for them, and they've had to either go back into employed or gone out of the industry altogether. But I think it's because they've gone into it because they think they're a good estate agent, they can just make it work. But it's just so different because you've not got that constant lead source. You've got to go out and get your leads and have a proper lead generation strategy like we've always spoken about, that is going to consistently deliver valuations for you. And not everybody gets past that part of it.
No, I agree.
And then if you do, let's just say you get, one or two valuations, I think there's a danger that you can be so desperate for them that you start lowering your fees, and you get into this cycle of low fees and inconsistent marketing. You definitely don't.
Well, you just become everyone else, and you just become, like the agent in the town that's been there for years.
Yeah,
that is competing on price. They don't have anything to offer other than Rightmove at a lower rate. Which I think segues quite nicely into the next episode, which was with David Lindley. We were going to have Simon Cowie, but he was also ill that week. So David kindly stepped in, and we were just talking about David. Obviously, aligns really well with what we offer at TCA because he's very much about the premium markets. Obviously, they operate the license model rather than the partner agency model. Now people can obviously buy into the license and start their own partner agencies. There's one particular agent near me who I think would be a good guest. I think David did a shout out on the podcast. Marie Fritz. She's a really good agent. I've kind of overlapped with her a few times. She was part of another licensee for a premium network. where we are recently in the county upward from me. Always thought she was a really good agent, did things the right way, and obviously now she's moved over to Buy Design with David, Matt, Mark, and co, and it seems to be going well for her. But one thing I took from David is that obviously it wasn't necessarily about licensee and partner agency, but more so along the lines of the premium market and why he's so passionate about premium markets. And I think, I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it was like, I want to say it was something like 5% of all commission is in the upper end of the market, but it accounts for over half of the overall commission in actual pounds and pence.
Yeah, I think it was more than that, JK. I think because what he was sort of saying is that the lower end of the market now has become more of the niche market, weirdly.
It's commoditized, isn't it? That's the problem. It's the lower market. And the thing is, it's much more difficult to stand out in the lower end of the market because people just want to choose on price.
Yeah, it's hard for people to differentiate at the bottom end of the market. You know, if you've got a Rightmove subscription, unless the marketing's extremely poor, it's harder. It is harder to stand out because you've got less of a marketing budget as well. So you can't really, if you're doing 1% fees on £300,000 houses, or and there's some horror stories where it's even less, 0.5% or low fixed fees like we were back in the day. There's no budget to do a really.
Well, you're doing 0.5% on 300 grand. That's 1,500 quid for 6 months' work.
Oh no, yeah,
if not more.
Yeah.
If you did an hourly rate, you're probably better off working at Tesco stacking shelves.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, you've no budget for the client because you can't really do a proper specialist video. There'll be an argument to say you can't really even do professional photography because the cost of outsourcing that might eat well into the fee because even if it's only 150, a couple of £100, if your fee is 0.5%.
Also, Dave, we're also forgetting that, it's worth mentioning the average agent, certainly where I am, and I think it's across the country, only exchanges on like 48% of what they list. Yeah. So, you're throwing 1,500 quid at the wall, hoping it's going to stick. And that, you might end up having to sell that twice. So 1,500 quid then becomes 750 quid,
I came across there was a Facebook sponsored ad the other day, and it's an agent reasonably local to me. I've never heard of them before, to be honest, but they're not too far away from me. But it flashed up as a sponsored ad, and they had a big sell your home for $995 plus VAT across the front of this advert, and it was a family run business, and it was three ladies, and I clicked onto the website, and the website looks brilliant, and the marketing looks brilliant. They're a reasonably new company, and I just wanted to contact them and say, please don't stop.
Yeah,
you'll regret this decision massively. Like you actually don't need to do this. Your marketing's really good. Your brand is actually
they'll be
really
gone though.
good.
That's the thing. What they don't realise is that there isn't. If they'd have done that 2.5 years ago, when in the COVID market, they'd have been really busy. And you know yourself, Dave. With relocate, and I obviously did the same thing with 999 fees. Is that in your average market, I mean, even in a really good market, arguably it's difficult with sales progression and chain fallouts and everything else. Running a sustainable, profitable business, because if you've got a pipeline of say 300 houses, so and you're 999, and let's say for example you are better than average and you're converting exchange on 70% of those in a year. That's still, I can't do the maths that quickly in my head, but was it 240 grand or something like that that you're going to turn over if you manage to do all those in a year. That's a lot of work in a year, and how big of a team are you going to need?
That's the key. That's the key. You can't, because it's the minute you get busy. Like when we first did this, and I feel very qualified to talk about it, as do you, because we've been there. But again, going back to this partner agency thing, when you make the decision to go and do it, really do your research and understand which market you're going for. Because I definitely jumped in feet first and paid the price, because we got busy really quickly on the back of being a cheap fee agent and providing good quality marketing, which we did. I mean, it's a world away from what we do now, but it was good quality marketing for a cheap fee. And we were getting these listings. I think I'll never forget. Like we did like a 35 or 40 instruction month, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" At £999 fees, and people from the outside looking in, thinking it was incredible. But the reality is, not every one of those is going to go through. And then you cannot cope with the demand. The team in the office were climbing the walls because they couldn't cope with the phones and they couldn't cope with the sales progression. So your service levels drop. You then have to go and recruit. And then when you recruit, you're taking on more overhead. And you've got to continuously have this huge volume coming through. And it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. And again,
just on that, actually, Dave, there's an agent near me. I won't name them by name. Obviously, there's one near me that was in a town that's been established for over 30 years. And they've always been the cheap fee agent. They're the classic agent most agents have got in their town where, the photos are still being done on a point and shoot from 1995. Sometimes they'll do a floor plan. Sometimes they won't do a floor plan. The marketing is dreadful, but they'll do it for nothing. And another agent stepped into that town recently, and they've been doing cheap fees, but they've been doing like reasonable, like they've been outsourcing. They've been using like a company called Niche near us, who I suppose is a bit like your Lens Media. And they'll go out and they'll do pro photos and they'll do a decent floor plan. So everything looks reasonable online, and they've basically done what the other guys were doing, but better, mopped up their market from them. They've gone from having an average of probably 150 to 200 for sale online, like covering a wide area. I looked the other day, they've got 74 in total online, 50 under offer. And their average fee, I know their average fee can't be any more than £2,000. And they've got a big high street office, probably employ 7 people. But a lot of their pipeline and sold STC sales, because somebody pointed this out to me the other day, are sales that some are on there from early 2024 and some from the back end of 2023. So arguably, how many of those actually in the pipeline? So a lot of those are beginning to, they'll die out. They'll be done in 6 months, the way they're going. But what a lot of these people are jumping ship and jumping into the EXP models. The EXP models where you can go in and be a branch and be powered by to get the overheads off their head. And I think just unfortunately just jumping out of a situation they're in, what they really need to do is, probably listen to this podcast and go back to the mini-series and, how do you look? What are you doing? All of those different things in the process, because, being cheap isn't going to work anymore.
No, set yourself up for success. That's the key. And it feels like we've gone a little bit off piece, but it's this.
Yeah, sorry.
It's not. Well, it's not though. It's relevant to partner agency, because I think if you're looking to start, whether it be with one of the big networks or a smaller local partner agency, you still, you're going to be responsible for your result. Nobody else is. You'll get the support, but you are going to be responsible for your results. So to have that plan in place and do it from day one and start and be consistent, for God's sake, be consistent with your offering. It's so important, because it sets the tone for everything else that you do. And the minute you go down that route where you start going, I'll do it at 0.75%, or I'll not do the professional photography on this one. We'll just do it on the next one. And before you know it, your next 6 or 7 listings are like that. And that's what you become known for. You're not standing out. And then you are really mixing in with those that only do charge 0.75s and 1% on the £250,000, £300,000 houses. And it just becomes
competing on price
to make money. I think from memory, going back a few weeks, but that's kind of a thing that I did pick up from Alex. I think you've just got to stick at it. You know what I mean? I might be wrong if I know he had success quite quickly as well, because he's just a great agent. But I think sticking at it and staying true to yourself and what you're trying to achieve, because once you get past that first barrier, that first completion, that first exchange, whatever, and you get that next listing and they all start to pile up and they look the same. I was speaking to Ian Story the other week about where we're at and stuff, and I was just saying I'm just aiming to get into a certain cycle. So I think you've got to have listed a certain amount of houses, sold a certain amount of houses, have a certain amount of stock for sale, And then once they start exchanging, you're on this cycle, and they'll just keep
Yeah.
ticking over. And as long as you're doing the right things consistently, it'll keep coming through. You'll have your quieter months, but your busy months will really make up for the quieter ones. So, like you, JK, you had an amazing January in terms of your sales. Your February probably won't be as good, but it'll still balance out, won't it? And you'll be
100%. Well, if you think we've got 51 sales in the pipeline at the moment,
yeah, brilliant.
and we talk about where our average fee's at, it's not certainly not to be sniffed at. I mean, we're probably almost treble what we were in COVID in terms of pounds and pence. But the funny thing is, in COVID, we probably had 70 houses in our pipeline, but the pounds and pence figure is just ludicrous. Like I say, it's almost 3 times what it was in COVID.
Do you know what though?
Moving on. Sorry, go on.
Just a quick one. Sorry on that, JK. There was an air of inevitability about it. I mean, I know you're absolutely made up with where you're at, but it was always coming because you've done the consistent thing and you've got a plan. You can see it. You can see the trajectory. There were always going to be bumps in the road, and I know there were bumps in the road because we've spoken about it, where perhaps cash flow was really tight for you. In fact, I do remember it wasn't that long ago, probably 12, 18 months maybe, where I remember you having a few cash flow issues, which we all go through. And those are just a thing of the past right now because you're absolutely flying. But it was always a case of stay true to the process and just keep doing it.
100%. The cash flow issues for me were all because I was on a growth mission. And the thing is, I think what people have to realise is you've got to spend money to make money. And that, if you're not prepared to, there's a great podcast that's literally I've just started listening to this morning, Diary of a CEO, from Mr. Beast. I don't know if you've heard of Mr. Beast before.
Yeah.
But his interview with Stephen Bartlett's just dropped this morning. I don't really listen to Diary of a CEO anymore, but he's someone that I've followed, Mr. Beast, for a little while. Obviously, he's all over the internet. He does some amazing things. But one of the things that, again, they talk about success leaving clues, about how obsessed he is with what he does and how he does it, and how, he's had to basically almost leverage himself to the point where he was going to go bankrupt to take a risk in order to get to where he is now. I just think, nothing worthy, nothing good happens without taking a risk.
Yeah.
And, whilst, we weren't on our arse, I was way out of my comfort zone. But but like you said earlier, you trust the process and you believe in where you've got to get to. And, if I hadn't done that, we'd still be where we were before. Whereas now, we're in a really good position, but I'm also continuing to invest and improve. And, we're not done yet. If anything, I'm just getting hungry to take more risks and more growth. Because
it's the same with Ian. Ian's had phenomenal growth over the last few years, and I just think the minute that you take your foot off the pedal and start I'm going to go on holiday more than I used to do, and I'm going to be in the office less, things like that. That's when somebody else will catch you off guard. And somebody else will creep up behind you. That's the one thing that I do like about our pods and our private conversations, things like that. There's no doubt. I think we can all feel it in all our areas that there are other agents now cottoning onto this, starting premium brands and trying to go down the route of high-end photography and videography. We've all said the same thing, that the majority will just tail off because they won't be consistent. But if you don't remain consistent, then you could become the fall guy and somebody else could take over. So you've got to continuously be investing in yourself, investing in your team, investing in the marketing that you do, and ultimately really thinking, again, going back to the Perry's, one thing I love about Perry's, always only ever thinking about the client. It's all about the client. How do we make the client experience better? And that's what you need to be doing. I know Ian's going through a bit more of a consolidation year this year, where he's talking about we're just going to make the front end processes so slick, so that everybody gets incredible service, better than they've ever had before. So they're going to keep the consistency with their branding and the proposition that they offer, the photographs, the videos. They're obviously going to add little bits to it as well. Of course they are. They've just brought out the YouTube channel and advice videos and things like that. They're always doing more, but he wants to make sure everything is absolutely slick inside, so that the service that his clients are getting is 2% service all the time. I think you've got to be hungry for that. Otherwise, you could quickly come off the rails. I think seen it many
100%.
times before.
I think so. Obviously, last episode was Ian Macbeth. Before we kind of obviously round off our learnings, I really enjoyed Ian's episode. Obviously, listened to him on other podcasts. We've interacted before. Obviously, he's a Chelsea fan, so he's obviously a really good bloke.
He's a terrible man.
Could be worse. He could support Man United. Systems and processes came across there, and I think that across all businesses, systems and processes are super important. Obviously, they're big on social media, lead generation. I feel like what I got from listening to him and asking him questions, and we did put him on the spot, in fairness, was there's a really good culture at Avocado, and he gets a good feel about. And one thing he said that I thought certainly resonated with me, and is how I would run my business, is how are you a good person? And I think that really comes across. I think if someone's a good person, what is it, that Simon Sinek thing, the trust performance axis, and I just think, would you really want low trust, high performance? No. They go on about, I think in that particular, it's on TikTok and Reels and YouTube. You can see it anywhere. But taking on the right people, I thought was really important. One thing I really did love was the 40 odd pages of brand guidelines and license information that you've got when you become an Avocado partner. And I just think, that is, for me, crucial. And I think, whilst we don't have a 40-page brand guideline at JK, if you're going to scale in the long term and have all the people on the bus driving the same way, they've all got to commit to being able to, fit into what the mission is. And it's very clear what the mission is. And if you're not going to, for example, if you're not prepared to put yourself on camera at Avocado, you're not in. If you're not prepared to do X, you're not in. It's the same with us here. If you're not prepared to go on camera at JK, nah, not interested. It is what it is.
I was gutted I missed it last week. Did I tell you I was ill last week?
No, you haven't mentioned it.
Yeah.
Hope you're feeling better.
I was very ill last week, so I couldn't make the podcast. No, I was genuinely gutted I missed it, because I think Ian Macbeth is such an impressive guy. I really do. I think his business is excellent. And what I like about it is that not only, all of his partner agents are raving fans. Every time I see them on different social groups and things like that, they're always praising Ian, the team. The culture that he has created, I think is.
I think Mike needs to get a shout out as well, because
Mike as well,
Mike Robson in the back, because he's not as vocal on social media.
No, he's not.
He's very much.
I listened to a podcast with Mike on Chris Watkins' sofa, and he was just as impressive, actually, mate. And if anyone's listening and has not listened to that podcast, I would definitely listen to Mike Robson's podcast with Chris Watkins. I thought it was a really good listen. He's a really interesting guy. He's got an interesting background. To me, it's no surprise that Avocado is such a great success, because they are both so switched on. And like I say, I think the Ian, what also impressed me about Ian as a business owner and running this partner agency model so successfully, because you've got to remember they started in COVID, 2020-ish, and they've grown it to, I think, 25, 30 partner agents now. And he was even talking about getting bought out and growing it to a certain number. He's just so clear in his vision. And even though Ian has set up a partner agency business, I think the same can be said if you're going to be a partner agent or a self-employed agent setting up. You need to have a clear vision of what it is that you want to achieve. It's little things like how he was talking about he wanted to create the complete opposite of what the public perceive an estate agent as. The three-piece suits, the cheesy lingo, and whatever it might be. So he said, well, how can I do that? I said, well, we'll get rid of that. We'll wear pink hoodies. Just something completely different. The video and the quality of the marketing that they do. And like you said, JK, the brand guidelines that they have, there is a certain culture that they've created. And if you don't fit that culture, then you can't become an Avocado partner agent. They're not just taking anybody on. I think he was talking about how he said we've had loads of people reach out and apply, and they're not quite the right fit. So it's got to be right for everybody. I was super impressed with Ian's podcast. It's actually probably one that I'll listen back to. because I think he added a ton of value for it, particularly if you're an estate agent looking to start the model. And I'm sure there'll be lots of people that want to work for Ian as well. I say for Ian, with Ian, because it is very much a partner agency model. So I was very impressed with that. Very impressed.
Do you think it'd be good to cap off, what we've kind of learned from all of them now?
Yeah, I think we've kind of done that, to be honest. I mean, I think each and every one of them has added different nuggets along the way. But it's to me, if I'm honest, it's more the consistency as well that comes with it. I think even though everybody's added their own version of it and given their own opinions, there's quite a lot of the principles all align. That makes sense. That they're all kind of saying the same thing. That you can't just walk into this and expect it to be a success overnight. You've got to have a good support network around you. Don't come in without a plan. Don't come in without finance. Otherwise, you're just going to fail and find it. You're going to be miserable with it. I think there was so many key takeaways from people. It was great to hear different sides of the story. I mean, obviously Perry is a partner agency owner, but he's also been a brilliant agent. Rich is just a fantastic agent. I know that firsthand because he works with you. And he had a great view of how you should. Well, he was a really honest, open opinion of how a self-employed agent should expect to start in the industry. Alex, again, brilliant agent, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get to dizzy heights over the next few years. Dave Lindley, obviously, he's not a practicing agent, but having that license model, and he's been at the one of the biggest licensee models in the country, hasn't he? Before. A really experienced guy, brought in a load of experience. And then for me, Ian, he's kind of like, would you say he's like the freshest one in terms of the partner agent model?
Maybe. I mean, they're what I like is that they've niched. They are very much about the family markets.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
They're not interested in the premium market, which I thought was quite key in having him on the podcast, because obviously we are mid to high end on the podcast, but also they've got a brilliant business, and I just thought having them on there, because there's great insights, and I obviously think with their lead generation strategy being majority on social media, fits really nicely into the demographic that they want to target. They're not after the high end of the market. Yes, they pick up a couple here and there, but that family market is on social media. And that's where they drill down with what they do. They don't do direct mail. For me, I mean, learnings across all of the episodes. For me, I think if you're an agent listening to this, what can you take from that series? I think if you're not offering partner agency within your business, it's great for retaining high performers. So, if you have somebody in your team that you don't want to let go and lose to a partner agency model, and you like them, you know them, and you want to keep them, it's great for retention within the business. Obviously, you have to figure out how that fits in and works for you in that business. But it's very much a partnership. The most successful partner agencies are ones that are in partnership. So it's as much about the brand as it is the person. And working side by side. The right people, the right processes, and experience is crucial.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I think it's been a really, really, really good series, an absolute eye-opener as well, and we've had some really great guests.
You're looking forward to the tech mini-series, aren't you, Dave?
The tech mini-series I cannot wait for.
I also thought as well, just before we move on, is what a great mini-series would be for agents that have multiple branches, like another perspective, the multi-branch mini-series, having people on that are, have gone from one office to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 10 or whatever. Like Matt Giggs, for example, his model is slightly different. But
I'd like to get Matt on. I just think he's a great guy anyway.
I think it'd be interesting to drill down on that. But I think in that mini-series, if we do it, it'd be really good to speak to him. Like where I am in Norfolk at the moment, a guy I'm connected with on social media, I've interacted with a couple of times, a guy called Jamie Miners, and he owns an agency called Miners and Brady, and literally you can't drive 5 minutes around here without seeing a Miners and Brady board. So well done to Miners and Brady in Wroxham. But I mean, I know he's really passionate about growth. and multiple branches. So I think it could be a really interesting mini-series. But yeah, hopefully next week we've got another special guest lined up, which might be a good time to kick off our tech mini-series.
Is she confirmed?
Not confirmed yet. That's why I said might. But just waiting for a WhatsApp back to confirm. But
cool.
Hopefully,
if that comes off, she is fabulous, powerhouse in the industry. That'll be a really, really good guest. But yeah,
and I think the other thing, just to get on that, just one more thing. Sorry, mate.
Sorry?
With having her on, we had a message the other week from Sarah Hood on Facebook about the lack of female guests on the podcast. It certainly isn't on purpose.
No.
It's just the way it's gone. And I think, with next week's guest, will be a really good way to kick off the male-female equilibrium. And if you've got anyone else that we have actually offered Grace to come on the pod as well, because she was tagged in a post. I think she could have had some real value.
I've missed that. I do apologise. Possibly may have missed that.
Were you ill, Dave?
I've been ill. Yeah, I don't know whether
you
knew about that, but yeah.
Just so get it in there, mate.
Sounds good. But no, the tech series. Jokes aside, I mean, I do love my tech, but yes, I wouldn't say it's like my strongest point. But I do love tech.
You've only just got broadband.
Yeah, I'm still on AOL dial-up at home.
Yeah. So you're telling me I could download an MP3 in less than a minute? Dave, it's streaming now, mate. It's called Spotify.
I've got polyphonic ringtones on my phone, which I'll show you next time I see you. No, I do. I genuinely love tech. I do. But I'm more interested in, obviously, there's so much prop tech out there at the moment that it's like, where do you look? What do you use? So it would be good, actually, to get a really good overview and maybe get some great guests on that can, provide us and get first-hand experiences from people who are using tech to a really good level. But I just find there's so much out there at the moment.
There's a lot of crap out there as well.
Yeah, it can take you away from old-fashioned estate agency, which more often than not is picking up the phone and having a bloody conversation.
That's right, yeah.
But I don't doubt there is lots and lots of great tech out there. It's just that when we talk about it, Ian and I might go for a round of golf. Leave you to it.
Yeah. Cool. Seems like a good place to call it then, mate.
Yeah, it's been a really good series. Thank you to all the guests that came on: Perry, Rich, Alex, Dave Lindley, Ian Macbeth. You've been.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks, JK. Great to see you. Thanks, Ian Story, as well, for coming on.
Cheers, mate.
You're welcome, lads. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys.